I am delighted to introduce my guest today, Ms. Sophie Bowen, who is a friend. I have coached her. She works COOK Food, and I love COOK. It's a client that I have been so privileged to work with here and there over the years. Now, COOK has got so many accolades to its name. First of all, its food is delicious. Second of all, it's helped me bring up my 4 children on a cold winter's night when I have no food in stock. I just pop a frozen meal in the oven and it's just the job. But I love their culture. They win awards for it. They're part of the B Corp community, and everything about them, I'm not saying it's perfect, nothing ever could be, but everything about them just is held together and integrated with this desire for a strong, human-centered approach within their culture to make profit. And I love that. I love how they have so many programs to integrate people from difficult walks of life to work there. There's a career escalation there. When you're there, they want to grow you and develop you into the best you can be, to go beyond what you thought. It's such a contagious space. And so why I've got Sophie on is because Sophie leads the L&D function at COOK, and it's a very complex space, L&D, for many reasons. If any of you have had touch points with it, it can feel like an add-on. It can feel like a nice to have. It can feel like a KPI. But Sophie, throughout her career at COOK over the past 15 years, has really found a way of integrating it into the minutiae of the business, of the strategy. And I really want to pick her brains about how we can learn from that for our business spaces of enabling a culture to thrive with our profit growing at the same time. Sophie, it is so lovely to have you on the pod, and congratulations on your recent marriage. How are you doing?
Really, really well. I
Yeah,
think I'm really good at it.
really good at being married. Just
I think we're
bossing it.
nailing it. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. No, it's such happy news. It really is. And yeah, you working at COOK, you've been there for, how long have you been at COOK for?
15 years last month.
Wow,
I
that
know.
is some miles
Nuts.
on the tank, isn't it? What, in your experience, in your career, how would you define extraordinary leadership?
I mean, there's so many different ways you can define it, aren't there? But for me, it's for leadership has always been about creating the conditions for other people to achieve more than they thought was possible.
Hmm.
So within the context of COOK, obviously COOK is a vertically integrated business. So we have a head office, but we also have manufacturing sites and we also have shops right across the country. And that means that the demographic of people that we're working with is really different. And therefore, what people need from their leaders is really different. So I think I've had a first-hand view of leaders needing to create the right conditions for growth when people might have had experiences where they kind of capped their own potential. So I think for me it's like being the container where people feel safe and they but also stretched
Yeah,
and can thrive.
yeah. There's 2 things I can kind of hear in that. One is context is everything. So you
Mm,
said across the sites, there's different spaces of leadership. So there's a real wisdom in knowing what's the context in which I'm leading. And
hmm
then there's this other thing of reaching potential, of creating a space for people to reach potential. Um,
mm,
not that you're my new dictionary, but I love
yeah.
asking people what they think of words. How would you define potential? Because it's one of those words. It's like, oh
Mm.
yeah, potential. How would you define it? Give it a stab.
I guess it is the energy within yourself or that you
Nice.
have yet to unleash.
Wow.
Maybe that's what I mean.
Yeah, I
Because
know. I like that.
I also think it's really it's limiting to help people to achieve their potential because then it assumes that there is a ceiling for everyone.
How
And
funny.
I don't think that that is in a lot of our L&D strategy at COOK, especially around leadership development, we talk about helping people become more than they ever thought possible, which is a slightly different thing to achieve your potential, because potential is a sort of hard line. Like I've
Yeah.
achieved my potential and therefore I'm done.
How funny. I've never thought of it like that. And it's so true that sometimes words can be such a kind of
Mm,
encouragement and are like, come forth with that kind of meaning, but it can also be quite off-putting. Oh, I'm not reaching my potential, but I can
mm,
have more potential. That's really interesting. So we talk about it a lot in leadership spaces. So becoming more than you thought you could.
mm.
And you said unleashing an energy.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? I wonder what that energy is for people. I wonder, so many of us are just sort of surviving sometimes or just trying to do the day job. It's kind of hard to think what energy is missing. I guess it comes back to you've heard of ikigai, I'm sure.
Hmm.
Yeah, so people who don't know, it's this Japanese concept of four concentric circles of self overlapping into your perfect space or state, ikigai. So it's what you love. Help me out, Sophie. It's what you love, what you're good at, what
What
the world,
pays? What the world needs?
what
What
pays you, and what
pays?
the
Yeah.
world needs.
Yeah.
That's it. And if you can find all four of those markers, you're in your ikigai, which I guess is a way of tapping into that energy or that
Mm.
sort of potential.
Yeah, I think so. And I think it also is that sense, without getting too like woo-woo, that sense of like inner wisdom
Yeah,
that is like something that you never get taught at school. But actually, the more you kind of, it's that like listening to your gut thing
yeah,
and making decisions from like who you are and leading yourself first, all of that kind of juicy space.
yeah.
Actually, that's the real energy
How
once you
so
can listen to intuition.
so you're, I mean, I've always loved working with you because I mean, Cook is, it excites me so much because you've got so many people doing loads of different jobs who are all swimming in the river of learning and development of,
Yeah.
I mean, you don't really need external consultants because you're all kind of doing it yourself. I love it. It's a real place of growth. How, in the practical spaces, I mean,
Mm.
business, bottom line, that's, essentially we're trying to make money in business. How how do you, from your L&D department at Cook, how do you integrate this stuff, this cultural stuff, this potential, this creating spaces for leaders to enable people to do more than they thought? It's a big question. Go with it where you want. How
Mm.
do you execute that?
I get asked this a lot.
Yeah, I bet.
And I think I have a really like horribly unhelpful answer,
Go on.
which anyone who's been to any kind of L&D conference, the answer is always, how do you get your senior team in any business to buy into L&D as more than just a nice to have, but
Yeah,
actually a business lever? And I think we've always been really lucky at Cook that we've got two CEOs who are deeply invested in our learning culture and learning for themselves. Like they fully sign up to always growing, always developing. And
yeah,
so the not helpful answer is we push on an open door at Cook.
yeah,
Within constraints, obviously, every business has got financial concerns at the moment with cost of living and cost of doing business rising. But I would say the number one priority to getting anything done and getting anything embedded within business strategy is to start at the top, and help people to see that L&D is not something that is um, do business or make money plus L&D. It is one and the same,
yeah.
and the two things feed each other.
So it's a real, I mean, that's not it's the simple things are the best things and the truest things. So your answer is not simplistic, but it's not, it's actually very profound. But to have it role modeled by leaders
Mm,
who not only tick the boxes and the sign off the budget, they're actually doing it themselves.
yes,
That's
no,
what I'm hearing,
100%.
which
Yeah.
means they're prioritizing time and
Mm,
effort and inner growth.
mhm.
And it's how funny that action, as opposed to just ticking it, that action percolates to some extent. Where have you noticed friction to L&D, and how have you overcome it?
Well, I think that there's always constraints. Um, I think my our biggest challenge has always been and will always be for every L&D professional is there's never enough money to do what you want to do.
Yeah.
And you and I both work in this kind of world. If you want to do the sexiest stuff, it costs a lot of money.
Yeah.
And we're working with over 2,100 people now. So if
Wow.
you start slicing up that pie, the kind of L&D budget per person we've always had is reasonably small at COOK. So we have very much learned to embrace those constraints. And I genuinely believe that might be just because of who I am. And I'm naturally a kind of think outside the box person.
Yeah.
But we've always tried to embrace those constraints, because I do think that if you've only got a small budget, you reprioritize and you go, well, we don't need the sexiest L&D, we need the most impactful L&D.
Yeah.
And that might look like taking a group of leaders on a walk and running a workshop while we walk and talk. Or it might be, I once took a group of people out into a field and we did a giant org chart out of fuzzy felt,
Wow.
because that was the most creative way of doing it that worked within the constraints of our budget.
Yeah. I love that though, because talk to me about that. What was, because this is the thing. I did a work, and I'll come back around to this. I did a workshop recently, and I like to think I'm fairly intelligent, and but I'm also very playful, and sometimes the two can feel slightly sliced apart. And I brought to this table, I set the worksheets up and stuff around the table, got everything looking nice, and I have rubber ducks, right? There's a reason for it, and they were all different. Each rubber duck is different, and everyone had a rubber duck on their desk, and they had a pen with a little bit of writing on it, something like, I don't know, don't be an idiot on it and stuff like that, fun pens. And when they came in, the immediate reaction I got, which I often get for things like this, is, wow, it looks like a playgroup. Wow, it looks like we're on Blue Peter. And, there's the wall right there of like, oh, I'm sorry, have I not played the paradigm of just showing a nice boring bullet point slide for you, in a nice white and grey office. We are humans, don't forget. And I made a bit of a joke about it, and I said, don't worry, the intellect's coming. And by the end of it, they said, have you got any more rubber ducks? I want to give them to my team. There is a power in something playful when you unpack it. But so bringing that back round to your field with fuzzy felt and doing an org chart. How beautiful to embrace the constraints of not much money to do something like that. But what was the impact, and how did it? Yeah, was there any impact? How was the impact?
Well, I'm sure that it's the same thinking that you have around the ducks to start with. As soon as you get people moving in a different way and being creative, it breaks down barriers.
Wow.
So you have richer conversations when you've got props in the room, or if we're not just sat at a desk. So many people have such a difficult relationship with sitting at a desk and learning. Not everyone had a great experience at school. And so I think as soon as you start getting people learning in a different way or in a different space, it unlocks different parts of their brain. But I also just think that particular exercise was just really empowering for people to kind of co-create something, to physically co-create something together.
I love that. Funnily enough, there's a strategy consultancy that does business strategy, and they love data. They've created software and stuff that create playbooks for businesses. But when they meet to do strategy for businesses, they don't bring in laptops. They hire conference tables that are really long, and they take a massive roll of paper and down the whole middle of the thing, and they get pens and they go, we're going to draw your strategy.
And I'm sure some people go, I don't know, I don't like it.
Where's my PowerPoint? Where's the large boring list of PDFs that we need to read with, but there's something about, I guess it is just unlocking different parts of the brain, you said. And what did you say? It takes down a prop. It takes down armor to enable richer conversations, something like that.
Definitely. I also think people get used to it. Like we've had a L&D function separate to our people team, or kind of within our people team under the same umbrella for I guess about 8 or 9 years now. And when we first started, so the fuzzy felt example is part of a program we run every summer called Free Range People Days, where we get everyone out of the office and we take them into a field and we do a workshop or some team building. And we first started doing that, as with every program, we met resistance and people going, what is this weird thing these people are trying to get us to
Yeah.
do? And now it's something that is just so embedded in our culture. People really look forward to it. We would never want to get rid of it, because it's just part of our culture,
Yeah.
and people, it's not a scary thing anymore.
So in your experience, I mean, you've seen Cook really grow over the years.
Mm.
And I kind of have two questions for you. The first question is, what are the kind of key things you have grown in and learnt about business through your experience at Cook?
Oh my gosh, so many things.
Really?
Yeah, I think, well, within the context of culture, I think the biggest thing that Cook will have ever taught me is that having a set of business values means something, and that they're not something to just put on a wall and forget about,
Wow.
but that they're genuinely to be lived. And I think when when anyone has conversations about, how do you create such a rich culture at Cook, where people can grow, or people feel safe, or they feel part of something,
Mm.
I always say, and it's a bit of a cliche, but we genuinely live our values,
Mm.
and all of our decisions are aligned with our values. We talk about them constantly. Our L&D programs are all completely aligned to our values. So our leadership programs literally teach, how do you lead these behaviors based on the company values. So
Wow.
there's so many things Cook has taught me about business, but I truly think that if you want a thriving business culture, you have a set of values that live and breathe, as opposed to just being a poster on the wall that doesn't mean anything to anyone.
Yeah. The thing is, how you're talking, it just sounds so great. How the heck, I come back around to it. How does it not become something on the side?
The
Where,
biggest, I think the biggest mistake people make is that the values are written by a HR team or in an internal comms team.
right.
And I've spoken to so many people who, their business rewrites their values every 3 years or 5 years. And there's nothing wrong with that, except if it's being driven from the wrong place. So when we wrote Cook's values, or wrote them down, so the reason they came about was because there used to be a saying that we'd hear across the business time and time again. People would go, well, that's just not very Cook. But nobody could really like put their fingers on what do we
What
mean
does that
by
mean?
that. And if we're going to make the big business decisions based on the fact that it's just not Cook, what does that actually mean?
What is
So
Cook?
exactly. So actually what we did, the values at Cook came about, Rosie, our CEO, who was people director at the time, I believe, really let in, and hundreds of people across the business inputted what they thought being Cook meant, which is
Wow.
where the kind of 5 Cook values came from, as opposed to it being the CEO or the HR team saying, this is what we think the business should be.
Yeah.
The values were what the business already was and what
Mm.
people felt from the business, which is what I think makes it real for people.
I think that's really interesting, and it's so obvious. Again, the simple
Oh yeah,
things are the best, right?
yeah,
Like, why do we
exactly.
stress and make it a KPI? Oh, I've got to come up with some values for my
Yeah,
function.
exactly.
I must do it by Friday. There's an ownership there, and something I see in businesses a lot is language like this. Oh, well, they've just said we have to do this, or
Hmm.
well, we can't do that because they won't let us. And there's a lot of, and I often go, who's they? And they go, well,
Mm.
the leaders. Which leaders? And they're like, well, the kind of line above. Well, who? Like, there's such it's like pinning jelly to a wall. It's just this kind of ugh. and and forgetting that our leaders, our CEOs, are part of us and this as well. It's
Yeah,
like, oh, well, they won't let us. Who won't? There's never a kind of person. It's just this bleh. Does that make sense?
yeah, yeah,
And
totally.
and it probably comes from small behaviors, like, where do our values come from? They come from one function that we're trying to percolate throughout the business, or it comes from one new CEO who said let's do it, and it gets
Mm.
gets pushed around. But actually, to have your whole company say, what makes us great, which is different to saying, what values do we want?
Very
Because
different.
what values do we want are almost trying to put a plaster maybe over dysfunction
Yeah.
rather than looking for the good and going, actually, what is good about us and build on that strength.
100%. I do a lot of training at the moment we're opening millions of new shops all over
Wow.
the place. I'm off to Edinburgh tomorrow to do
Oh,
training with the new shop team.
wow.
But one of the things we talk about, obviously, with them, like every company does, is what are the company values. And we almost don't, we talk about what they are, and we talk about how they might play out in the shop. But really the training is be aware of them, because you will feel it.
Yeah.
And it will feel different to everyone, but actually they're not aspirational. They're not something that they're not a lofty goal that we're trying to get to. They're interwoven into just the fabric of what it means to work here.
Yeah.
And I've yet to come across someone who doesn't think that is true.
Yeah. It's I love that. There's a real consistency of the communication though. Every time are they franchises, your shops? Is that
No, they're
not.
company
They're all owned by you.
Yeah.
So with each shop, I've been in about a million of them. I'm probably one of your best customers.
Groupie. Groupie.
Yeah, I'm like, oh yeah, let me go to Edinburgh and try the new one. I've often joked, haven't I, that my children's first year of growth is all based on I breastfed, and it's all based on the cook meals I ate. You guys do such a great discount for new mums. So what I was going to say I love the communication is congruent. Like whenever you have a new shop, it's just bringing that in and not relying on any assumption that they're just going to catch it, that there is intention on it. Help me with this like shift change here. People looking at their L&D. So if they were listening now going, I'd really like to just start tackling our culture, and they look at the world of L&D, they've probably got some internal functions covering it. What would be your nudges, advice, or key questions to consider for them on how and where they start if they want to have an integrated learning, an effective learning and development culture underpinning their business?
Oh, it's big questions. I mean, honestly, we're doing a review at kind of all the time of our culture and the kind of key pillars. I think. What do I think? I think it's never a bad exercise to ask yourself what would happen if we did no L&D. We've been thinking about that in my team for the last month or so. What would happen if we did no L&D next year? Because it's famously difficult to impossible to actually measure the full impact of a learning program. I've yet to find anyone who has pure data on how much a program has impacted or not impacted. We can kind of get a feeling or some feedback, but the data is always kind of cloudy. So we've been doing a bit of an exercise around, if we did no L&D next year at COOK, what would the impact be on our culture? And I think that's an interesting question to ask, because then you can build up from the ground of, okay, well, what are we trying to achieve? What's the business plan? I mean, all good L&D strategy comes directly from business strategy. And I think sometimes we can fall into a rut of doing the same thing over and over in L&D because it used to work, or it's what we've always known, or we haven't really got the resource to think it through. And actually just asking yourself, what's the business strategy next year? If we did no L&D, would we be able to achieve it? And then start putting your building blocks in place.
Wow.
And that sometimes can be quite hard when you've got programs that are really emotive and that really like embedded in the business, and actually saying they're not serving us anymore. They're not the most impactful L&D that we could be doing. That's a hard conversation to have.
That's a season change, and that's an ending, isn't it? I just reminded our headmaster at my kid's school is leaving, and we went for a goodbye, and everyone was like, "Oh, it's so sad," and we're like, "It's so sad because we really like him," but actually, the school can't grow into the next phase without that sad ending, and endings are sad. So but great things have to end. It's really hard, but it does. We are thinking of the wider context of business at the moment and the growth we're in, and the younger generations coming through and brain power. And I read today even Deloitte's article saying that Gen Z are more productive than any other generation data set we have so far, but the most unmotivated.
Yeah.
So isn't that
I just truly believe Gen Z. I know that there's so much moaning in the
yeah,
business space about Gen Z,
yeah,
and I honestly just think they're going to change the world. They're going to
wow,
change the world of business. I really
wow,
I think there's a lot of millennials who look at themselves and think, why have I not asked for clearer boundaries?
yeah,
Why have I not prioritized my well-being more? Why have I not sought out roles that are more purposeful?
wow.
And I think you can that goes either way. You either get
Exactly.
resentful and bitter about it, or you go, actually, I could learn a lot from them, and we could all learn a lot from
Yeah,
Gen
yeah,
Z. And
agreed.
why don't we embrace that? So
Yeah.
yeah, it's interesting that you say that.
Absolutely, absolutely. But I think it's that productivity piece is really interesting because I do this exercise sometimes with teams. I won't say too much in case I do it with anyone listening because it has to be a surprise. But basically, it's about shaping sorts out, sorting shapes out even. But you have to wear a blindfold. That's all I'll say. And I've done it quite a lot. And when I've done it with Gen Zs, they are the quickest
Mm,
and the most collaborative compared to any
mm,
other people group, which is interesting, isn't it? When I'm
yeah,
trying to teach
yeah,
collaboration and productivity.
yeah.
Yeah, it's really interesting. There's all about a stick around. So going back to looking at your L&D, so first off, what would what would it look like if we had none? And what is the strategy, and start almost from scratch, that kind of mindset, not be afraid to say goodbye to things that are even good, starting again. I think
Yeah.
there's a lot of, that's a great question,
Mm.
let's say you then see what are the impactful components
Mhm.
and you want to make them run.
All of this within, you don't want to put any of your components in until you've got a clear vision for what you want your L&D to actually do.
Mm,
So in this kind of spirit of what does a great L&D strategy look like, we're not doing anything until we actually know what our North Star is.
yeah, of
And so
course.
if you don't have an L&D strategy or a vision or a mission of some fashion for your L&D team, you can't really put your building blocks in place until you, I would say, start with, if it's a house, we love a
Yeah, love
strategy
your house.
house, as you
Yeah,
know, Dolly,
love
you've
it.
seen ours.
Yeah,
But you start with your roof, and then I genuinely start with the foundations. So what is our vision? What are we really going after? Ours is, God, I'm not going to be able to remember the exact wording off the top of my head, but our
yes,
L&D vision is a culture of learning where everyone becomes more than they thought possible. That's
great.
just simple.
Yep,
Lofty goals, right? Like at
yep,
the moment, we simply do not have the resource to do
yep,
that, but it's always what we've got in our sights.
yeah,
And then we're always aware of what our great foundations are,
yeah,
which are um, a lot of it is around like the community and the engagement that we have around our learning.
fine.
Obviously, you've got kind of your learning
Yeah,
platform if you have that, but a lot of it is, a lot of our L&D is done on goodwill. So the foundations have to be like, how do you grease before you even bring in a program, how do you grease the wheels? And as I say, you want to start with who are your senior stakeholders, who's really going to back you and champion you in a boardroom or in that kind of senior leadership
wow,
space. Who have you got? Who are your kind of champions in each team? Because there will be people who naturally gravitate more to learning than others. So who is it who's going to go to your finance team and go, guys, actually, this is a great program. You could all really benefit. Who are your early adopters who are then going to sell it in? Because it can't just be the L&D team.
love that. Yeah, you need your early adopters, don't you? So do you strategically reach out to them and say, hey, can you be that role? Are you that
I mean,
explicit?
we've done it. So yes, we are. They kind of know it's coming now because we kind of have one eye on, we've done it so many times, and we know who are the people who are always emailing us with, I've listened to this amazing podcast, or you guys should do this workshop. And we've also got, what we're really lucky at COOK, we've got a lot of buy-in, not just from our SLT, but also from our strategy group, so our heads of department.
Yeah,
And it's actually written into their leadership behaviors that they have to give back to our learning culture.
wow,
So we have go-to people. So we have an amazing lady who's our head of concessions, and she's our go-to feedback guru. Like, she's amazing at giving and receiving feedback with her team. So whenever we're doing something, we want to do something in that space,
yeah,
we know that we want to get her on board because she's not only a font of knowledge, but also she'll be our champion within
Wow.
that space.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, I had a lady called Wendy Cochran on the show, season 2, I think, who is really senior in HR. She's been at RBS and all sorts of kind of high profile places. And one thing that stuck with me is she said, I wish people didn't consider HR as a tag on, but rather as the integrated core component across the business. And what she said, a great CEO is when they recognize that and work really closely. And then HR, which encapsulates L&D, doesn't become something that has to resolve problems. It becomes something that drives change. And that's
100%.
kind of what you're saying, isn't it?
I think sometimes HR positions itself outside of the system though. And one of
Yeah.
the things I would say is like one of the constraints that I'm sure that other L&D professionals run into time and time again is remembering that we're a support function and we have customers essentially. I know that you're an internal L&D team or a people team, but you have customers just the same as
100%.
anyone else. And I think sometimes we position ourselves outside of the system and make people come to us. And one thing we're always trying to do at COOK is to remember not to have ego and not to do it in the way that works best for us, but know that it might have to get a little bit messy and for us to go to our customers if we have to go to the mountain essentially.
Yeah.
And it does mean my team are regularly in our manufacturing sites doing nights because we refuse to ask our nights teams to come in because we work 8 till 5, that they should have to come and do their training 8 till 5. Actually, that completely disrupts their sleep pattern. So we go in at 10 p.m. and do it when works for them.
Wow.
I think sometimes you can fall into the trap of being inflexible and forgetting that at COOK we talk constantly. The most important people are the people who are making our food and selling our food, the front line essentially. And it's not who am I to say that they have to change their sleep pattern or drive from Edinburgh to Sittingbourne to receive L&D. It should be the other way around. I should be making it as easy as possible for them.
I
to
think there
access
is
it.
absolutely. And just as I love that, it's just, I mean, the value within that is just, that's just kind. That's just decent, right? And that's being seen. That's being like, oh, I'm supported. Thank you. Yes. I mean, so you should, but equally you might not, and might say process says 8 till 5. That's
yeah.
Just bringing the conversation in a little bit. What, we alluded to it before we went live, the language learning and development. I know we were saying before we recorded, we don't rate it. I just find, for me, it reminds me of just training, and it just is rubbish and tag on.
Learning's a little bit better than training.
Well, I know. So what do you think's wrong with the concept of learning and development as a name, and why?
Well, I think a lot of people have bad experiences of learning. I also think that as adults, we are a bit scared of it. We're scared of being in that like beginner space, which is why sometimes you get a lot of energy and fear around signing up for L&D or in other businesses being put on L&D courses. I just think it's for me, it's soulless. I think it doesn't really tap into the fact that it's just a group of human beings who are growing together. It becomes very transactional. And as I say, it's a little bit better than training, but marginally. What would your steer be if you were going to come up with something different? Anything, come up with anything.
I mean, well, obviously I love my words like extra. I probably call it the Extra Shot Academy, or
Beautiful.
just I mean, it's just, I'm doing the same thing, but we're just calling it something different on the tin, because I want it to do what it says on the tin. So I run events. So I either have retainer models, I do executive coaching, speaking, but I also do what I just calling them, instead of workshops, I call them pop-ups with impact. And it's just that it does what it says on the tin. Some businesses who don't have retainer model for me for a year. That great. Could you come 3 times a year and run some workshops? I'll go, no, but I will give you some bespoke pop-ups with impact. And so when people come, they're like, oh, is this training? I'm like, no, it's a pop-up with impact. They're like, what does that mean? Just defamiliarizing people.
It's like we were saying just before the recording, we've been playing with the idea of moving our L&D team from being called learning and development to learning experience, just within the same concept of it creates this idea of school, I think, sometimes when you talk about training or you talk about learning and development, and actually it more being that kind of playful experiential space, which could mean anything. It could be just you on your own, reflecting, and us providing the tools to do that. It's starting to break down this idea of, because one of the pitfalls of this industry is people thinking that they can only learn in a classroom environment, because it's so conditioned in us that we do an annual survey. We do the best company survey every year. And there are a lot, as you can imagine, some questions about, do you feel like this business helps you to grow and learn? And you would be amazed at the number of people who don't put two and two together between all of the learning that we do every day in our roles. They've even had a new role that year. They maybe are leading someone new for the first time, but because they've not been on an academy or a formal program, they go, no, I haven't learned anything this year.
Wow.
Because they haven't joined the dots. They haven't been in that kind of formal space. And I think, I mean, I'm not alone. It's an industry-wide conversation about how do you help people. It's that 70-20-10 thing, isn't it? Of like, how do you support people to harness all that good juicy learning that we're all doing all the time, and see it as learning, and to track it and record it and reflect on it, rather than just relying on that tiny space where we actually are in a classroom.
It's
learning.
The KPI of learning, like, oh yes, I've done 9 courses and I learned how to new matrix. How wonderful. My favorite quote, you probably heard me say it lots, but is, we don't learn from experience, we learn from reflecting on experience. And so I would suggest that the questions that people are getting are not helpful questions. If it's kind of playing into that paradigm, it's, if you had to say 3 things you have learned this year throughout your experience in your company, what would they be? You probably get a very different answer to, have you learned anything this year? Right? It's all in the power of the question. But that's, I mean, in my book, I talk about this chapter called the aeration chamber, but this space of, like, when you pour wine into a glass, great, drink it. But if you pour it into a kind of carafe and let it aerate, the enzymes do different stuff. Toxins get released, like loads happens to the body of the wine, and it tastes different. Same thing, but it's just given space to do something different, to have a different experience of it.
Totally.
And it's a much richer experience. And it's the same with us with reflection. And we're so fast paced these days that reflection, we'll, oftentimes people think it's like yoga or staring at bark on a tree. And
which is also great
if that's your vibe, 100%. But I reflect through doing. So for me, I like roller skating, and I find I reflect loads when I roller skate.
Love that. Love that.
Obviously makes me, I'm so tall already with roller skates, you can imagine I'm like 9 foot. But it's, I have to do, but now I know that that's how I reflect well. It's in motion, however it is for each of us, but reflecting is so important. Why coaching is good, why actually doing feedback is good. It helps us percolate, become richer, full body, doesn't it?
Yeah. I mean, we're doing a piece of work at the moment. As I say, we went back to the drawing board and went, what would happen if we did nothing? Obviously we've got to a place where maybe we should do something. And a lot of, as you can imagine, a lot of focus, as always, on leadership development, but we're really trying to pare it back and do less telling people how to lead, and really focusing on the nuggets that people really need to know, or we feel like are a really interesting conversation, and then building in much more space within these academies for one-to-one coaching, mentoring, and reflection. Now that's a harder sell at kind of senior leader level. If you're building courses where you're like, actually, we're just going to get in a room and just reflect and think, I'm grateful that our senior leaders are really up for it and really on board with it. But I do appreciate that it becomes an even harder sell. I know that we run team building, and I know the teams when we take them on free range days who will think that it's been a waste of time if we haven't just crammed a load of content in. They'll go, what was the point? What did
Yeah.
we learn?
Yeah.
And so I think it's being mindful that
Oh,
we all know reflection is brilliant and actually providing these spaces is great, but it is still quite a hard sell.
it's a really hard sell because it's so counter the control mechanisms we've got of KPIs, of being crammed full of new matrices and new research data and and just giving people space to actually be in thought.
Yeah,
Where's the ROI on that? But what if
yeah.
that's what we've got that AI haven't got? We have got thought. We're not a learning language model. We have the capacity to think. Yeah, that's a real leverage, but a hard sell. I get that.
Yeah.
Sophie, as we come into land, what is the item from home that personifies extraordinary leadership?
This is not going to surprise you at all.
Go
And
on.
I wanted to do something that you'd be like, that is definitely a Sophie thing. Now, this is not a household item that I would say many people have, but I have them in every room of my house.
I was going to say, is it
Of
a cricket
course.
bat? But it's a cricket ball. Yes, she's a great cricketer, cricket coach extraordinaire. Tell us why.
Because it really, when I was reflecting on the question about extraordinary leadership, it really made me think. My dad, when we were growing up, my dad taught us how to play cricket. My mum is also a cricket coach. Our family are cricket mad. And my dad always used to say that cricket was a team game for individuals.
Huh.
It's different to football and hockey, where the ball is passing fluidly between people all the time. Actually, cricket, you have moments in cricket where it is just one on one, and it is full spotlight on you if you're bowling or if you're facing your batting. It's essentially it's very exposing, and it's very much your opportunity to shine. And your team are all there. If you're in the field, you're there, you're cheering them on, you're there to support them, but you're not actively participating at that moment. And it really made me think about, like I said up top, about creating the environment for people to thrive. Yeah. And knowing that if a lot of the time we're not all passing the ball directly all the time. Actually, we've got our own projects, we've got our own focus, and we all need these moments where we can be extraordinary. We can really shine and be elevated and supported by our team. And it's okay that we're not all participating in that particular thing all the time.
Yeah, I love that. It's not sort of, I mean, different analogy, but it's not like we're just all in the water swimming around together. There are moments where there are kind of key points of focus and key points of limelight. But there's times where you have to allow others, but you have all got each other's back. I love that. I think that's really, really apt. Also, so my children are mad cricketers, and I noticed that one of them had a cricket coach that was horrible. And really had favorites and only highlighted particular, teenagers that he liked, but then he would ditch them out of favor and bring in someone else. And you never knew where you were. And I think there's something about being a leader that can be really fair with where the limelight needs to go without having favorites, and making sure that every single person, from the backfielder to the wicky to the constant striker, can all have a space.
Yeah, it's there's very much an element of like conducting and knowing when the right person is, when it's their moment, when to bring in that person, because it's the right moment for them to shine. I mean, we could do a whole separate podcast on what we can learn from Ben Stokes' leadership of the England team. Love it or hate it.
It's really strategic. I've seen with my kids, it's like, no, you're not batting now. We're putting Ben in.
Why? You're not the right person right now.
But I'm really good at batting. Yeah, you are, but you're not the right person for this particular match. You're not batting. And but just taking that on the chin, isn't it? I love that. Well, Sophie, thanks so much for coming on the pod today, and congratulations again on your new marriage. And wishing you all the best at COOK and beyond.
Thank you so much.
I so enjoyed that conversation with Sophie, all that wealth of experience, and actually just distilling it into its simplest form is are the leaders doing the work themselves? And that's a real cry for you, for any one of you listening who is a leader. Are you leading into growth? Have you got a coach? Have you got someone or some spaces in your life where you are actively reflecting, seeking to reflect, paying to reflect, even sometimes just paying for it prioritizes that execution of self-reflection? And something about learning and development, to get it integrated within our business spaces, can feel a bit like a Rubik's Cube. Like, once you start with this program or this initiative, there's another one, another one, another one. How long is a piece of string? But I think it does start with self. And I really want to encourage you today, in any shape or form of leadership, how are you growing? How are you reflecting? And who are your running partners for your growth? And if you don't know or haven't got answers to that, then do reach out, as I might be able to help you, and or I could signpost you to the right spaces. Thanks for joining me today on this wonderful, chilly, frosty morning. Have a great week, and I'll see you next time on the pod.